All right, we're in week 4. We're like past halfway done. So this is Positive Solutions for Families session 4, and this one's called Teach Me What to Do. As we move forward. So if we think back to last week, and last week we did a little bit talking about family rules and kind of setting up some boundaries and pieces in your family that you think would be necessary and helpful. And I'm wondering if anybody might have pulled something together that they'd like to share. We gave you some examples last week of what that could look like. And we really talked about how to make sure that you're including your kids in the process of creating rules, because when they are part of that process, they're a lot more likely to follow through on actually doing the things that you ask them to do. So, and it's kind of amazing how kids can think of rules that maybe you didn't even think of. So, so I think that if anyone is willing to share, we would love to be able to see and hear what you came up with. Anyone?
I could share.
Sure.
I asked my 4-year-old today at lunch what she thought. I said, let's come up with some rules. And my 2 were clean up when you're done with something and touch gently. She did not like the clean up when done with something, but fully supported touch gently. And then she came up with don't get into mischief and don't eat food you're allergic to and get your flu shots and vaccines, which I thought was really fascinating.
Telling. Yeah.
We might be in a pandemic. We obviously didn't use any of those rules because they don't match. But then we came up with take turns when playing. And then this was hers. Totally. She said, always tell a grown-up if you don't feel well. And
like that.
I actually like that one because it was like, yeah, if you're sick, but also if like someone's hurting your feelings or if you don't feel comfortable. So those are our rules.
I like that. I like that. And you know, so when kids come up with ideas and you hear them and they're typically worded in the negative, right? They're typically worded in a way that isn't positive, like don't do this and don't do that. So what you can do then is kind of go deeper and like maybe have a small conversation about rewording it. So making sure that the message is still there, like the whole idea of don't get into mischief is like, okay, so what you're saying is that you need to be sure that you're doing, you know, A, B, and C, whatever those things are, instead of getting into mischief. So what are those things that you could do instead? So when you have the conversation, that's when you probably could go a little deeper and help kids find ways to word them in the positive. It just takes some time, definitely. Anybody else want to share? No pressure. Okay, no pressure. Okay, so we're going to move forward then. So let's talk about this week. And this week we're going to really think about how do we help teach our children learn a little bit about emotional vocabulary. So talking about your emotions is really important. Really, really important for you as an adult, and then how we teach our kids. We're going to talk about controlling anger and handling disappointment, because honestly, when things aren't going your way, it's really hard when you're 3, 4, 5, how to pull yourself together. And so that's something that definitely adults need to learn how to help kids do that. And then we're going to talk a little bit too about problem solving. When we have a problem, what are we going to do? As the adult, we don't want to go in and fix it for them because kids learn absolutely nothing. So we want to think about what are the things that we're going to do to help kids learn how to start solving their own problems. So when we think about emotional vocabulary, I want you to kind of, if you see these pictures, I want you to kind of look at them and get an idea of how would you label these feelings that you see on people? If you look at the one that's on the top left-hand side with the little girl with the hands on her sides of her face, what emotion or feeling would you call that? You can say it out loud. You can throw it in the chat, whatever works for you.
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. I like that. I like that. What other words might you think? Anyone? I look at it and it makes me think of kind of that Home Alone, scared kind of thing. Like I see fright, you know, and recognize too, when you're seeing these are just standalone pictures. So we don't know what happened in the context to kind of see that. But for kids to be able to start to learn and look at people and start to figure out what they see. What do they see in someone else? And the hard part for kids is you have to remember, kids aren't going to figure out someone else's feelings till they understand their own first. You can't have empathy till you understand your own feelings first. So our job as the adult is to start with the kids and really focus in on helping them learn ways to identify their emotions so that they can eventually learn how to see someone else and identify their emotions. So it's kind of like things build on each other. When you look at the picture on the top right-hand side, what is that kid telling you?
Is he upset?
He's upset? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anybody else? What do you see?
A little bit of anger, maybe?
A little bit of anger. Yeah. What makes you think anger? His arms? I look at his eyebrows. I look at eyebrows a lot. I don't know why, it's just a thing with me, but I tend to look at eyes and eyebrows a lot. So again, we don't know what happened before, so we don't really know what caused these kids to look the way that they do. But it's really important, again, if you are an adult who doesn't understand if you can't label your own emotions, then you're not going to be able to help kids label theirs. And really, you think about yourself as an adult, you could be a great role model for kids. So, you know, when you're walking and you bump into something and your coffee spills, you know, that's an opportunity for you to say, oh my gosh, I'm so disappointed in myself, or I'm so angry with myself, or, you know, this wasn't good timing. I feel sad that I have to clean this up. Whatever it is that you feel, but you label it and you say it out loud, because that's how kids know that, oh, when you spill your coffee, sometimes you get sad because you have to clean it up. Or, you know, they start to put the pieces together by watching you. So typically when I go into classrooms and I see children who are, when I see kids' reactions to certain situations, I typically am just kind of in my own head wondering like, ooh, I wonder how that happened at home. Or certainly language, and all of us know that sometimes we blurt out words that we probably shouldn't. Kids will come into school with that same language. Kids are watching you and they absorb everything that's going on around them. So they can absorb the good and the bad. So just keep that in mind. So why we want kids to really have this good, strong foundation and emotional vocabulary is because of all these things here. They tend to tolerate frustration much better. That if you can say out loud and kind of get it out of your body that you're so angry, you're so upset, you're so incredibly excited, surprised, whatever it is. And if you can say that, you can handle that frustration of whatever's happening much better. Kids typically, and this is all research-based, so I'm not making this stuff up, they get into fewer fights. Kids who can really identify their own emotions get into fewer fights. They engage in less destructive behavior, so they're less likely to want to hit or throw something or hurt someone. They're typically healthier because when we get our emotions out, we definitely aren't keeping them inside our bodies. And we know now, just because of information about stress and how it affects our bodies, that when we keep things inside of us, it actually does physical harm to our bodies. So just keep that in mind. Children who can express their emotions are typically less lonely. They're actually able to connect with other people. They're less impulsive. They're more focused, and they actually have higher, look at that, they have greater academic achievement. Children who can focus on and identify their emotions actually are better academically. So there's lots of reasons why we want to do this, right? It's not just because we thought it was a good idea. So if you think about enhancing emotional vocabulary, if you want to take a look in your workbook, it's on handout 14. There's a lot of words in there too. So let me just say, it's really important, again, that you as the adult talk about your feelings. I think it's important for you as the adult to ask your child to tell you how they feel. So obviously younger ones don't have the vocabulary yet to be able to say it, but they'll get it if you start using it when they're very, very young. So you don't just start when they can start talking, you start from the moment they're born. You want to be able to teach different kinds of words, right? You don't want to just stick with, I always say the basic 4, mad, sad, happy, glad. I'm like, yep, those are the 4 we tend to go to all the time. When you're looking at books, you definitely can take the time to stop in between pages, look at pictures and see how the characters are feeling just by looking at their pictures. When you're watching television or watching a video, thinking about too, that you want to stop and you want to reflect on situations and discuss it. Oh my gosh, look at what the character in this book just did. He fell down and he was sad. You know, what do you think he's going to do next? Do you think his mom's going to come and help him? What do you think is going to happen? You really want to stop and talk about it and think about it. And you can do this with any book there is. It doesn't have to be a book about feelings to learn about feelings. Accepting and supporting your child's expression of feelings. So if they're crying, you don't tell them, you don't need to cry. You say, oh my goodness, that really hurt. Because it might have not hurt them physically, but it might have hurt their feelings. So all you have to do is say, you look like you're sad and you're hurt. I'm right here. I can give you a hug. And hold them and take care of them until they start to pick it up and get themselves together again. That's how kids learn to regulate themselves, through co-regulation. And then we want to be able to use books and art activities and all different kinds of things. Anything that's going on in your home is an opportunity to talk about emotions. So I typically am the one in my family, because of course, you know, I'm a therapist, but as my granddaughter is learning to walk, she's getting there. Courtney, I feel for you because your little one I know is already walking. I'm kind of glad she's taking her time. She just turned 1, but I'm like, all right, we got time. So as she's starting to learn to walk and she takes a step away and she falls, I don't say, you're okay. Because honestly, I am not the one that fell, she fell. I say, are you okay? Are you okay? You look sad. Did that hurt? Did that surprise you? That probably surprised you. You didn't expect that to happen. And then you hug them and you send them on their way and they're okay. So it's the idea that I'm not telling you how to feel. I'm not telling you you're okay. I'm asking you, because that's respectful. And I'm giving you the space to tell me, hey, no, you're wrong. It's not that I hurt myself. It's that I'm just feeling sad. So you really want to give that space for kids. And I want you to think about that you're thinking about this. So this list of lots of stuff is really important to think about. And so I don't expect you to all jump into it and do everything all at once, but thinking about just your daily routines and the daily things that you do, these are all pieces that you can have an opportunity to build on those, the vocabulary skills that you want for your child. So here's some examples of ways that you can use photos, because obviously kids, when they're little, you know, you can't write, they don't read yet, most of them. But thinking about how do we help kids learn and identify, especially with faces, how people are feeling, because it's more than our face too. It's body language. You can tell how someone's feeling. But this is one example that they gave us here, and not that it's horrible, but it's not my favorite, and it's in your workbook, so you have that. But I pulled up a few different other ones that I think are a little bit better, probably describe a little bit better what we're looking for. So again, I literally just pulled these off of Google Images. So I'm not exactly sure where they're from. So this first one on the feelings poster that has the kind of on the left-hand side, the cartoony, I liked it because they showed not just facial expressions, but they showed the body language too. that, you know, when you're proud, you know, you're putting your hands on your hips and a kid is sticking out their chest. And that's pride. That just shows how prideful. It makes me think of the Lion King when he's holding up his baby. So it's, you know, it's that whole idea of there's so many different things that can be shown through our bodies as well. And the one that's on the top right-hand side, again, like show a little bit better, I think, with facial expressions, what it could look like. But honestly, personally, I like the one on the right-hand side on the bottom, because it's real people. I tend to like pictures of real people better, because I feel like it's a little bit better description. It really shows things. And right now, because we're all wearing, because it's COVID and we're all wearing masks, you know, it's not that kids can't see anything. I mean, they can still see your face, but your nose and your mouth are covered. And so oftentimes we do show a lot of our emotions through our mouth, and kids aren't able to see that right now, but they certainly can see the rest of your face. And kids do see eyes and eyebrows and foreheads. And so they're still able to kind of pick out what's going on with your emotions. And hopefully they're able to do the same for themselves. But again, I think it's more than just your face. It's body language as well. So when you think about it, identifying that it really is about looking at the photo, but really think about it, it's about the situation. So it's not just about the photo itself. Is there any thoughts or questions or anything that anyone wants to add? I want to make sure that I'm just leaving space. If you have something you have a question about or a thought about, you're certainly welcome to put it in the chat. So this is a list, a long list, a big list of different feelings. And Christine actually shared this with me, and I love it. I love it because it talks about intensity of emotions. And when we think about intensity, that, you know, we can be feeling, you know, pleasant, you know, very neutral, very kind of low. It doesn't really, you know, just kind of low, kind of hanging. But then you move into, I'm feeling kind of cheerful, you know, so I'm moving up that ladder of intensity. Then you might feel excited or elated. So there's kind of levels in this. And it's interesting too, because when I first looked at it, I thought, oh, this would be so much prettier if it was in color. But then I wonder, especially when talking with children, we want to be careful with color, only because some kids do tend to just pick their favorite color, even though they may not understand when we're labeling things with colors that there's a reason for it. So kids still are kind of egocentric in their own brains, that they don't really pull out that piece. So I kind of like that it's just black and white. But it still does show that whole level of there are kind of lower intensity, medium intensity, and then high intensity feelings. And there are different words that go along with that. So, so we'll make sure that you all have a copy of this when we're done, so that you can take it, maybe post it on top of your refrigerator, and remember to use the words throughout the day, throughout the week, so that you're kind of building even your own vocabulary when it comes to that. Okay. This now is going to be Christine, who's going to start talking a little bit more about learning how to do this piece.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about how you can teach these emotions and these emotion words. I mean, I guess you're not really teaching emotions. You're really just teaching, just honoring what they're feeling and teaching the words. So one way to do it is using songs and games. So this is If You're Happy and You Know It, expanding that a little bit more. They have If You're Scared and You Know It, Get Some Help, and then yell help. But they did use all those same words, the happy, sad, mad, scared. I feel like you can expand those words a little bit. If you're excited and you know it, jump up and down. You know, anything you can do to give them another vocabulary word is really going to help. And adding an action to it kind of helps it sink in their little brains. So just one thing to keep in mind, and obviously it doesn't have to be If You're Happy and You Know It. It can be whatever song you would choose to be able to do. Raffi has one about shaking your sillies out. And so there are definitely some ways that you can make it happen. the next slide. Karen, did you say I have? I don't think I do. So just if you can go to the next slide, that would be great. Okay, we're only going to be on this slide for just a little minute because I just want to show you the title of this book, Glad Monster, Sad Monster. There's a whole kind of like lesson plan in your workbooks that kind of goes over how to go over a book like Glad Monster, Sad Monster, which is a book that really delves into feelings. And it's a book you can take the monster's mask and you can make yourself feel, you know, what the monster's feeling kind of thing. So that is a possibility. And there's a whole lesson in there to do that. If you happen to have that book, or if you want to get that book, that's a possibility. But I want to talk a little bit more about the different kinds of books that you can use. And you can really use almost any book to do this. Workbook activity 16 in your book is literally a list of hundreds of books that are really talking about all of these emotions. It's talking about being a friend and learning empathy, but it's also talking about just feelings. There are books about sadness. There are books about happiness. There are books about you know, feeling friendly. There's just books about everything, and it's all kind of broken up for you into those categories. And I would recommend to take a glance at some of those. If you don't have any of them in your little library at home, you might want to pick a couple up. But I also want to talk about what you could already have that you're able to read on your own. So I know Millie had sent around an email about asking you all to bring over a children's book. Did everybody happen to grab a children's book? Oh, Karen has hers. Andy has his. Do we all got them? Do we all got them? Okay, so do me a favor and just pull it out. And I want you just to glance at one of the pictures, whether it's a character or a cartoon character or whatever it is. I want you just to glance at it and see if you can see an emotion in that face. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to share emotion-wise? Just look through a couple pages and see what you see. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share. But so, oh, thanks, Karen. Were you going to share with us?
I was just going to say, so I picked the book Waiting is Not Easy, which is, it's actually really a cute book. It's kind of long though. So if you've got one that won't sit that long yet, be careful. But there are so many great pictures. And when I looked at this one, I mean, geez, these pictures don't show emotions. I don't know what does, but like he's screaming. And then this guy over here, you can definitely tell is mad just by looking at his eyebrows. And so I feel like, again, you know, as I would go through this book, I would actually point that out to a child and probably we could together figure out the label for those emotions that are happening right there.
Exactly what I was going to suggest is that maybe you start out with first doing your own labeling of the emotions. Ooh, I think that this person feels sad or scared or mad or whatever. But then embrace it with your child and have them tell you, how do you think they're feeling? I'm typically not a person that would recommend a character book. So I usually wouldn't recommend, you know, read a princess book or read a book like that. But there's one big exception, and that is the characters from the 100-Acre Wood and Emotions. So actually the book that I picked up was a Winnie the Pooh book. And in this very first page, Kanga is not happy, and you can see it in her face. So that would be something that I would talk about. The reason why I like the Winnie the Pooh characters is because you can really dig into emotions deeper than what we ordinarily think. So thinking about Piglet, Piglet's nervous, Piglet is anxious. Those are words that you can use to really describe his personality and his feelings that he's got going on. And kids will understand that because Piglet talks like this, right? So it's something that will really kind of help you to kind of get there. Same thing is true of many characters in Winnie the Pooh. Tigger is very energetic and is very easily excitable, like maybe a little bit hyperactive. My oldest daughter I used to say to her, she was very active, highly active. I used to say to her, are you having a Tigger moment? You know, you need to bounce it out. Do what you need to do to bounce it out, because she understood that. She understood what that meant. Same thing with Eeyore. Eeyore is, gloomy. He's more than sad. He's gloomy. I mean, I would argue Eeyore is depressed, and I might even use that as an expression if that's something, especially if it's something that you have in your family, that you have, it's a good way to kind of understand those feelings. So I feel like that's a really good way to do that in just a regular book that's not talking about the emotions, but it's just so apparent to see it. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes. I also found a book about wearing masks that was written from Challenging Behavior, which is actually kind of the company that oversees the Cephal website that we're using this from. And I'm going to share that with you when we send around the email of with everything that's happening. It's a book you can print out. It's like a little PDF story, and it's all big pictures of real kids, and they're wearing masks, and it talks about why we need to wear masks and what we need to do. It's kind of a neat little book, especially if any of your kiddos are struggling with it. Any of the kids that are a little bit older, maybe in school again, or headed back to school, might be a good idea to share that. That's not really to do with emotions, because like Karen said, you really can't see the emotions that well, but I just found it, so I thought I would share it with everybody as well. Okay. Karen, can we go to the next slide? Okay. So controlling anger and impulse. I just love this little picture. Like, I think one of the reasons why I love this little picture, and I don't know if you can see it, but he's got a yo-yo on the floor in front of him. I can remember my older brother being able to yo-yo beautifully and, walk the dog. He used to do it around the world. Anyone who knows about yo-yos and the things you can do, and me just trying so hard to even just get it to come up and down, and being unable to do that, and how just frustrating that was. So I appreciate this little guy so much, because I've been there. So in learning how to control anger and impulse, we have to first help our children recognize anger in themselves and others. So recognize when, you're angry. You're feeling really angry about that. It really let them know that that's what they're feeling, because they may not know why they feel their blood pressure rising and their face getting red. You're feeling angry. Then you can help children learn how to calm down, but until you know that they're angry, you can't help them with that. And then the step you want to get to is being able to understand appropriate ways to express that anger. So we're going to go ahead and dig into that a little bit. So one of the things that we want to talk about is ways to kind of control your anger and deal with it. One of them is this worksheet also, which we'll send around for you, which is breathing exercises. Now, this is you, Karen. Perfect, because my dog has been barking to get outside for a while. Thank goodness. Okay, you'll excuse me for 1 second. I'm sorry about that.
Go ahead. So these are from Becky Bailey, who does a program called Conscious Discipline. I'm not thrilled with a lot. She does a lot of really cool stuff, but a lot of it I feel like is not preschool. It really is more K5, K6. It's not really meant for preschoolers, but these techniques are. And so when we look at these kinds of breathing techniques, these are things that you teach your children to do. But let me say, there's a really important piece about when you teach kids. You don't teach them at the height of a temper tantrum. If that, like that little guy prior, if he was on the ground, I'm not going to say, I'm going to teach you a way now to handle your anger. You teach at a time when kids are just, everything's fine. You teach them these kinds of techniques when they're not in that heightened moment. Because when kids are in that heightened moment, the part of their brain that learns, that front part of their brain that you use for learning, is totally shut down. That's what happens to our brains. It just they shut themselves off when we're having these moments that we have when we lose kind of control. So these are what they call breathing and relaxation techniques. This is just some. There's a lot of things out there you can look at on the internet of yoga kinds of techniques and different things. But these actually help kind of control the way that we breathe and the way that we hold our bodies. And so they bring calm kind of all over you. And so as you look at them, you can see the first one is STAR. So it stands for stop, take a breath, and relax. And so it's the idea of, we tell everyone, you tell little kids like, okay, you're going to learn to be a star. So they put their hands out and their feet kind of out, at least, shoulder, and you kind of stretch yourself out. You take a deep breath and you relax yourself. And so if we do that, typically when we're doing this in person, I make everybody get up and do these. And so we practice them actually physically so that you get the feeling of what that's like. The second one is the balloon. We put our hands on top of our head. We take a deep breath. And as we take a deep breath in, the balloon blows up. So we put our hands up, then we go. And you do that several times. And there's actually the idea of oxygen running through your body and getting to your brain is calming. And that's not just because that feels good. It truly is. It changes your brain. It changes the way your brain is handling a moment. So again, and you can read the rest of these later, but what I'm saying with these is the idea of, you don't teach them in the moment when things are bad. You teach them other times so that when things get bad, then you can go back to, let me help you remember. Let me help you do the, let's do the balloon and take some deep breaths. You do it then, but you don't teach these brand new to them in the height of a temper tantrum or meltdown or whatever's happening. It just, their brains are not ready for it. So just consider that they're easy to do. They're easy kinds of things to do, and teach them and use them yourself so that you're modeling for them. Okay, go ahead, Christine.
Okay.
You're
I
on.
was also gonna add, yes, do them yourself, because they really can be really helpful, especially when your child is melting down. It raises your blood pressure and gets you frustrated. Courtney, I think you shared with us the other day, like you just feel, they pull you in, they're masters at it, right? And so, so because you care about them so much, you are easily triggered by them, if that makes any sense at all. So you have to, those things really help you. That star breathing, I mean, it's just some great stuff. So I do recommend taking a look at those. So we're going to read this little book that is in your workbooks. And if you want to print it out, you can print it out in color. You can print it out in black and white and have your child color it if you'd like to. It is really literally a book that kind of talks about how to be able to calm down when you're angry and what might happen. So it's going to kind of teach the steps to recognize that you feel angry and that you think stop. You go into your shell because he's a turtle, so he tucks himself into his shell, and you come out of the shell when you are calm and thinking of a solution. So this is the Tucker Turtle book. Oh, this is actually starting out with a turtle box. So this is a family that went quite a bit overboard and created a turtle box for their little guy to be in, which is kind of cute. I mean, it's giving you the idea of this is kind of your safe place, right? This is where you can hang out when you need to. So we're going to just quickly go through this little story. And it is something that really, I really do think it can be a little bit helpful. So Tucker Turtle is a terrific turtle. He likes to play with his friends at the park in his backyard. But sometimes things happen that can make Tucker really mad. So at this point, you're going to point out the face, because if a child is very young, they don't recognize that when eyebrows go down and when faces are scrunched up, you really want to describe what's going on here. That means that, I think that means that he's angry. That's what I think is happening right there. So when Tucker gets really mad, when he got mad, he used to hit, kick, or yell at his friends. His friends would get mad or upset when he hit, kicked, or yelled at them. So at this point too, look at, you can talk about what the alligator's feeling. What's the frog feeling? Yep, go ahead. So Tucker now knows a way to think like a turtle when he gets mad. He can stomp and keep his hands, body, and yelling to himself. So the first thing that you're kind of teaching is stop. The next thing is to deal with it. Get yourself under control. So tuck yourself in and take 3 breaths to calm down. Tucker Turtle says 3 breaths. Maybe it's 5 breaths. Maybe it's 10 breaths. This is just what Tucker needs to do. It might be something different for your child. That's okay. And then you want Tucker to think of a solution or a way to make it better. So coming out of it and then thinking, what can we do instead? Tucker's friends are happy when he plays nicely and keeps his body to himself. Friends also like it when Tucker uses nice words and has an adult help him when he is upset. And then we have just the end with Tucker in his shell. So it's a silly little story, but it kind of gives a little bit of these problem-solving steps that you kind of need to get to. So these problem-solving steps are, what's the problem? What can you do? Think of a solution, right? And then hopefully that's going to work to get where you need to be. In thinking of the possible solutions, there are a lot of, every situation might have different possible solutions, right? So there's not like across the board things that work in every situation, but you know what issues you have in your house, right? So in thinking of possible solutions, it might be to get an adult. It might be to ask nicely. It might be to ignore. Might need to say, please stop, or just the simple word, please. If sharing is an issue, if you have more than one child and they don't want to share their toys and things aren't going well, one of the things that, we always teach our kids to ask for it. Can I have that? I'm going to change that up a little bit. And I'm going to say, can I have it when you're done? If you add when you're done to that little expression, sometimes it works magic, because sometimes the other child will be like, oh, I guess I'm done with it now. When a child says, can I have it? And another child is playing with it, they're like, what if I want it again in 10 seconds? I'm not sure. But if you're putting like a time on it, when you're done, yeah, I'm done now. And then they might get it back, because that means that there's a chance that they're going to get it back. It also means that they get to choose when they're going to give it up. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. And then, as I said, if there's something that you're thinking of that's really challenging for you, Karen and I can maybe do a little bit of thinking about it and seeing if there's something we can come up. So does anybody have anything that you are typically dealing with, that you deal with on a day-to-day basis? So is it something that that your child won't share with their sibling, or there's an issue that you have going on that that isn't, like, even if it's not a major one, if it's just something you'd like to change, you can put it in the chat. I'm looking at it right now. So if anybody wants to put it in there, I won't even call out your name if you put it in the chat, or you can just yell it out. Okay, well, if somebody comes up with something, let us know, and we will, we'll definitely add that into.
What about, like, every time, like, if I'm working or needing to do something else and she needs to play by herself? Play by yourself?
So, I mean, that's a good question. And especially right now, it's very timely. Is there a way that you can have maybe 2 or 3 of her toys that are good for her to play with, that you could kind of put, like, say, on top of the fridge or somewhere where she can't see them beforehand? So, like, if you have a meeting at 10 and you're going to have to set that up at 10, can you at 9 gather up a few things that she likes and put them in a space, and then pull them down at 10 o'clock and say, look, when I have my meeting, which do you want to play with? Giving her the choice of choosing which one she wants to play with might help. And then, and if you're talking about it, like, when I have my meeting, what are you going to play with? It's setting the stage. It's not asking her, are you going to be good while I'm on my meeting? Because that gives her the option of saying, no, I don't want to even attempt that. And I'm not being funny when I say that. It is giving her the option of having a choice. Whereas if you make it more of a fun thing, and that you've set this aside for this special time, that for her to work on her own, what are you going to choose to play with? So that would be my thought. Karen, do you got anything else?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so when my kids were little, we used to have what we called the church bag. So we had a bag that we kept, kind of with the same idea, Christine. We had a bag that was all the things that they could use or would use while we were in church. So, and this is when they were really little, when I didn't expect them to really pay attention. So they each had their own bag, and they had quiet things in them because it had to be things that didn't make any noise or anything because we were in church. So it had a few books that they really liked. It had like a whiteboard and some markers. It had, as my son got a little bit older, it had things that he could like color and draw and whatever. So it depends on what your kids like, but it needs to be something that's kind of special and different. Because if it's the same stuff they play with every day, there's no novelty in it and it's not going to hold their attention. But if there are things that, that are just for, and they seriously were church bags. They stayed in the trunk of my car. And when we went to church, they came out. And then when we got done with church, they went back in the trunk of my car. So they were used once a week. So only once a week. So there was some novelty still in it. So I'm wondering if like when parents, as they have like these kinds of meetings, is there some kind of a box or a bag or something that you could, I mean, I even say go to the dollar store. The dollar store has all kinds of little stupid things that you can get cheap, but they're only, again, only for use when mom's in her meeting. And it's just, you can call it the meeting box. And whenever mom's got a meeting, you can play with the things in the meeting box. But then when it's done, they go away. And next meeting, you can have them back again. So as kids are little, that's kind of the only thing that I would expect. I wouldn't expect them necessarily to have the ability to just, keep themselves busy. Kids are not like that. You have to really give them something, again, that's kind of a novelty. Again, like you were saying, maybe that's the time that they watch a movie. That maybe that's the time that you plan on for that day, that there's something on television, or maybe that's when they have their screen time and they can play whatever you've got on the tablet. So it's thinking, but again, it's only at that time. Because if you don't do that, you lose the novelty of it.
Yeah, Reedy's also adding that dollar store is awesome to get cool little stuff for stuff like that. I think that's a great idea. We used to call them our travel bags whenever we go on a trip, and a trip could be only as short as like when we maybe go to grandma's or grandpa's, right? So it was only maybe a half hour, 45 minutes away. But if we were going on a trip, we would have our travel bag and we could play with things there. So that would be my thought about that. And you can have your daughter be part of that decision-making process too. Like, what would she like to put in the meeting bag? What do you want to be in there? Because this is going to be stuff you can only play with during the meetings. So what do you want to put in there that might give her a little bit of help with that? But like literally, you could start tomorrow by putting just a few things up without making a bag yet, and having it be, this is a choice that might make a little bit of a difference. It might not. It's constantly a work in progress. Does anyone have anything else that they want to add to this, or any other thoughts that they'd like us to help you kind of problem solve with as a group? Okay, cool. If something comes up, let us know. All right, so we're going to talk now about some problem solving games. And there's 2 long slides of this. This is also, we'll also send this home. I think it's actually in your workbooks, the problem solving games. If not, we will send it home. But I'm just going to go through a couple of them with you. Again, these are things that you would do with your kids, not in the moment. These are things that you would teach with your kids ahead of time. So it might be something that you would do when you're waiting in line at the grocery store or in the car. I'm a huge fan of talking with your child in the car. Even my adult children, my 22 and 24-year-old children, I will try and get them in the car alone, because you can get some great things out of your kids when they're in the car, because they're kind of stuck. So you kind of have an audience, and I think it's a really great way to kind of make some connections. So it might be something that you would, if say for instance, a couple of your kids have issues about the TV because they only get a half hour of TV a day, and somebody wants to watch this, and when I was a kid, it was my brother wanted to watch Batman and I wanted to watch Brady Bunch. But that tells you how old I am, right? So that was what we would argue about. But if that's a problem for you, plan it ahead of time. Tonight's the night that you usually like to watch this, and your brother usually wants to watch this. What should we do about it? Can we problem solve before 8 o'clock when the shows start? What can we do? What do we think we can do about this today? So that you can have like a conversation about it ahead of time. And that way, if they help come up with the solutions, they're going to be more happy with the fact that they might have to compromise, because that's really what it comes down to. You need to get your child to the point where they're going to be compromising. There's also some things like, what if your sister hit you? How would you feel? What could you do? They might say, I could hit her back. You got to be prepared for that. Okay, well, that might not be the best idea because you just told me you felt really bad. So do you want your sister to feel really bad? So it's a great way to have that conversation. There's a whole other set of them. So if we can go to the next slide and see the next ones. What if it was bedtime and you wanted to hear one more book? What could you do? So that's kind of a thought process. Like, this isn't maybe a problem yet, but maybe it is. But even if it's not, it's helping them problem solve. If they have a desired goal, is there a way that they can achieve that? Is there a way that, so if they say, yeah, I want to hear 3 books tonight, well, then maybe we can get ready a little bit quicker, because that will give us enough time to hear that 3rd book. So if you can set it aside to be able to do that, that can be something that can help you. What if you really wanted a toy at the toy store, but mommy said you could not have it? I love that one. Because it's just so true. It just happens all the time. Before you go to the store, before you're in the dollar store, this is a conversation to have before. So you'll have a list of these. And if you have any questions about them, you'd be glad to pass it along. But sorry about that, Karen, go for it. And this is you, I think.
Yes, I think it is. So kind of like just kind of piggybacking exactly what Christine was saying, like, try to anticipate problems before you have them. If you've had a problem before, just assume it's going to be a problem again. And so if you can assume that as the adult, you can start to figure out ways to solve the problem ahead of time. I think as adults, we have the ability to do that. Kids don't yet. They need your help to do that. So it's the idea of really taking a step back as the adult yourself and say, I mean, that's how I figured out we needed a church bag. You know, how many days could I sit in church and yell at them, except that we're in church, so I can't really yell at them. So, you know, so it started to become a problem. And it's like, we had to come up with an idea or a solution to figure that out. But I had to recognize that it was a problem and that I didn't want to deal with it one more week. So it's the idea that you have to start to anticipate as the adult. The kids can't do that yet. They're too little. You want to make sure that you're always physically near your child. Don't yell from across the room, ever, ever. Even when they get to be bigger, don't ever yell from across the room. First of all, you're going to just hurt your voice, because eventually it really does become a bigger thing. You want to get them used to an adult being nearby, talking to them quietly and calmly and figuring out what's going on. So, and also in this, you want to be able to support your child. So you're asking your child questions, you're listening to them, and you're helping them come up with solutions and ideas. So you're working on this together. This is a team process. And you want to make sure that you're encouraging your child. You know, that really worked out. That worked out really well. I think we might need to try that again. Or the opposite. Boy, they didn't work out so well. I'm wondering if you and I could come up with another idea for next time. So you're really encouraging them to kind of move forward with this, even whether it worked or it didn't work. You really want to think about how are you going to use what you know and what you've learned as the adult to help support them. So if you notice in all of these sessions that we've done so far, we have not said to you ever once, well, here's what you do. You just do this. And then problems are solved. It's really about brainstorming with you as the adult to say, how are we going to figure this out for you in your family life situation, at your children's ages and stages of life where they're at? How do we figure this out together? But it's the adult who figures it out. It's not the kid. So anyone who's kind of like looking at their kid and upset that their kid keeps doing something over and over again, likely I would say, turn that around and say to yourself as the adult, what have I been doing over and over again that this is just not working? Where do I need to change things? What needs to change itself around? So again, Christine and I love talking with parents, both of us. And so we're here. If you feel like there's like something specific that's happening with your family and you're like, we are available by phone. We can just like chat with you for a little bit and think about how we've used the material here and how do we help you use these materials that you've learned to actually help your situation at home. So we're putting ourselves out there to say we are free parenting resources for you. But there's also the Great Start Collaborative. So I don't want to take that away from the care coordinators who are amazing. So as you can see, kind of a wrap up in this. So this week we talked a little bit about emotional vocabulary. So making sure that you're using a variety of words in a variety of situations. We talked a little bit about controlling anger and disappointment. You cannot control someone else's anger or disappointment. You can only control your own, right? So that's a hard one too for parents. We want to go in and we just want to make our kid do this or that. It's not how it works. So it's the idea of how do we make sure that we're controlling ourselves to help support our kids. We're not going to change them. They're going to learn new things, but we're not going to change them. And then we talked a little bit about problem solving and how we go through those steps of problem solving. Stop, figure out the problem, think it through, come up with an idea or some solutions, and then try it out and see what works. And then if it doesn't work, we try something new. If it does work, we keep doing it. So it's just the idea of those pieces. So for your homework this week, thinking about the strategies and ideas that we've talked about this week, we want you to be able to write 3 ideas, 3. Don't wait till next week at noon to do this. Start working on it now. 3 ideas that you can do with your child this week to teach emotional vocabulary. So easily I can give you one is sit down with a book and read them a book and talk about the emotions. Boom, that's 1. 2, you could easily watch something on television, right? I tend to move to really like real life stuff. Like, so if you're at the park and you notice something happen, that's like so amazingly wonderful, real time, real life situations that occur. So it's an opportunity. So when things happen at the park that seem like they're really kind of out of control, that's like a wonderful teaching opportunity. But there are lots of different things that you can do. So just find 3 different things that you might want to try this week. Spend some time again watching your kid. And we talked a couple weeks ago about like the before, the during, the after. So keep that in mind. Christine, did you want to talk a little bit about the Great Start Collaborative before we say goodbye this week?
Wanted to make sure that everybody knew about the Great Start Collaborative, and that if you go to greatstartoakland.org, greatstartoakland.org, it has a tremendous amount of resources. It has a parenting tips page with just little tiny tips that you can do kind of on an everyday basis that will kind of help you with a whole bunch of things. And I really want to mention one page in particular, and that is our stress health page. Our stress health page has some great ideas